शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश। नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami. Every Sunday and Monday evening we are having this discussion. We have covered chapter 20, chapter 21, chapter 22, and today we are beginning chapter 23. Chapter 23 is quite short, quite brief, and we will be discussing certain portion of chapter 23 verse by verse, and the remaining portion of chapter 23, which is Prayojan, they are very esoteric pastimes, so that we will not discuss, but we will just summarize in one sense. So if you remember, Sanatana Shiksha is in 4 chapters, 20, 21, 22, 23. And although chapter 24 is part of Sanatana Shiksha, but it is more like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's question regarding the Atmaram verse explanation and Mahaprabhu giving the explanation. But in terms of Sambandha Abhidheya Prayojan, it constitutes chapter 20 to 23. Chapter 20 and 21, we saw Bhagavan Sambandh, and that Bhagavan is all these incarnations, Purusha Avatar, Leela Avatar, Shaktavesh Avatar, Gun Avatars. Then there is the Swayam Bhagavan, then there is Tadekatma, all that we saw. And ultimately, we have to establish Sambandh with Bhagavan Krishna, especially in his Madhurya feature, which was chapter 21, Sham Sundar Krishna. So Bhagavan Sambandh is chapter 20 and 21. In chapter 22, we saw Bhakti Hai Abhidaya. Once the Sambandh is established, then how to practice Bhakti. So I'll just share the screen of the overview of chapter 22, which we have just completed. So we saw that the Jiva is either Nitya Mukta or Nitya Baddha. And this Nitya Baddha Jiva by Krishna's mercy and Guru's mercy, attains devotion. And he gets adhikar to practice bhakti. And we saw the three adhikaris, Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama. And Krishna can be attained only by Ananya Bhakti, where the bhakti is ahetuki and apratyata. So Krishna's qualities that inspire surrender, and that was discussed. Because when we say bhakti, it refers to not Mishra Bhakti, but Ananya Bhakti. So that is the adhikar where we enter, where we have Purna Shraddha, and we enter in Ananya Bhakti. And then these stages, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, Anarth Nivritti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, apply. Now this Bhakti, Ananya Bhakti, which Rupa Goswami is defining in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anya Bilashata Shunyam. The definition is Sadhana Bhakti, and within Sadhana Bhakti is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaks about Sadhana Bhakti. This Uttama Bhakti is at three stages: Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. So Sadhana Bhakti was what was discussed in chapter 22. And we elaborately discussed the Sadhana Bhakti. And within Sadhana Bhakti, there is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So that is where chapter 22 ends. So now, once one practices Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and at the end of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, one attains the state of Bhava. So Bhava Bhakti begins. And in one sense, Bhava Bhakti is Sadhya. So sometimes the division classification is done differently. Sadhana Bhakti, Sadhya Bhakti. And within Sadhya Bhakti, there is Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So Sadhya is our goal, Prayojan. And Bhava Bhakti is the Prayojan. So that's why in chapter 23, after discussing Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Sadhya Bhakti, which is the Prayojan, is discussed. Now, we should also remember that Sadhana Bhakti begins from Purna Shraddha, and we also discussed how Shraddha is not an Anga of Bhakti. It is an eligibility of the entry door to practice pure devotion. And these stages, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, Anarth Nivritti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, up till there, it is Sadhana Bhakti, which has two divisions, Vaidhi and Rag. And Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti begins, in one sense, we can say, after Anarth Nivritti, and goes on till Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti. And then after that is Bhava Bhakti. So in chapter 23, which is Sadhya, Mahaprabhu is going to speak about Sadhya Bhakti. So let us now go to chapter 23. This is just an overview of chapter, what we have discussed up till now. So Bhagavan Sambandh is over, Bhakti Hai Abhidaya is over in chapter 22, then Prema Prayojan. And that Prema is at the stage of Bhava in the form of a Ankur, in the form of a seed. So that is also Sadhya, and that's why it is included here in the Prayojan in chapter 23. Okay, let's go to the overview of chapter 23. Life's ultimate goal, love of Godhead. Verses 1 to 8, Prem Prayojan, the ultimate result of Bhakti, Abhidhaya. What is the ultimate goal? What is the result? It is Prem. So this is first dealt in verses 1 to 8. And then after going through these stages, the highest stage of Prema, Mahaprabhu comes back to the beginning stages, how you can attain the stages, going through all these different stages, the 9 stages. So the stages of Bhakti, how this gradual development of Prema happens, is dealt in verses 9 to 16. And then in 17 to 38, the 9 symptoms of Bhava Bhakti and their characteristics. So this in one sense is completely covering Bhava Bhakti. And 39 to 65, the symptoms of a devotee who has attained Prema Bhakti is mentioned. And the remaining, in one sense, after covering Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti, the other topics like text 66 to 91 deal with transcendental qualities of Krishna and Sri Radha and realization of rasas by devotees is 92 to 101. And then 102 to 127, Lord Chaitanya concludes his teaching to Sanatana Goswami. So Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti is what we will be discussing in this series in chapter 23. And maybe certain portion, verse by verse, we will discuss. Also, let us see up till where. But the esoteric pastimes which are described here in this chapter, that we will not touch upon also. We will not touch. Please remember that. Okay, so let us now take the first section, verses 1 to 8, Prema, Prayojan, the ultimate result of Bhakti. So, when we practice Abhidheya, the result of Abhidheya is Prem, Prayojan. So this is the Mangalacharan verse, very beautiful verse. Chiradatam nijagupta vittam swaprema namamrit atudhara apamaram yo vitatar gauraha krishno janebhyas tam aham prapadde. The most munificent supreme personality of Godhead, Atya Udhara, Ati Udhar, very, very munificent, known as Gaura Krishna. Gaura Krishna is known as Gaura Krishna, distributed to everyone, Vitatara, even to the lowest of men, Apamaram, his own confidential treasure in the form of nectar of love for himself. And the holy name, Nija Gupta Vittam. Vitta means wealth. And that wealth is here in the form of Prema. So Nija Gupta, very, very confidential treasure. Mahaprabhu has distributed this. Only once in a day of Brahma, he does this. As Krishna comes once in a day of Brahma also. Swaprema Namamrit. Love for himself and the holy name. In fact, even when Krishna comes and performs his pastimes, he doesn't give this love for himself. He manifests these loving pastimes in exchange with his devotees, the Nitya Siddha and the Sadhana Siddha also, who participate in these pastimes. But rarely he bestows and gives it to others, even those who are there during his pastimes. He doesn't give that. But as Mahaprabhu, he only gives that. So that's why it is mentioned. Nija Gupta Vittam Swaprema Namamrit. This was never given to the people at any time before. Chirad Adattam. It was not given. Datta means to give. Adattam means it was not given. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Tam aham prapadde. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So in essence, this Mangalacharan verse is covering what is going to come in chapter 23, that is about Prem. So how Mahaprabhu has come to give Prem, and the ultimate goal of life is Prem. So that is what is going to be discussed here in this chapter. Jaya Jaya Gaura Chandra Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Acharya, and all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is also part of Mangalacharan. Now Mahaprabhu says to Sanatana Goswami, text 3. Ebe shuno bhakti fal prema prayojan yahara shravana hai bhakti rasa gyan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued. Now here, Ebe shuno, O Sanatan, Ebe shuno Sanatan, about the result of devotional service, which is love of Godhead. Bhakti phala prema prayojan, life's ultimate goal. One who hears this description will be enlightened in the transcendental mellows of devotional service. Yahara shravan hai bhakti rasa gyan. So although Prayojan is far away for us now. We are trying to practice Abhidhe properly. But the glory of hearing Shravan, what is that? You will get Bhakti Rasa Gyan. So this is very important for us as sadhakas, that we get enlightened in the transcendental rasa, Bhakti Ras, knowledge of Bhakti Ras. So this is what it is. This chapter is going to give the phala. The phala Shruti is mentioned here. Krishna Rati God Hoila Prema Abhidhan Krishna Bhakti Rasara Eis Thai Bhavanam. When affection for Krishna becomes deeper, Krishna Rati God Hoila, one attains love of Godhead in devotional service. Prema Abhidhan. Such a position is called Stahi Bhav, permanent enjoyment of the mellows of devotional service to Krishna. Stahi Bhava Nam. Now, I would like to know from the devotees here, what is Stahi Bhav, which Mahaprabhu is mentioning here? What is Stahi Bhav? Anyone knows? Raise your hands. What is Stahi Bhav? One hand has been raised. Okay, Virendra Yadav Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu Dandatana. So these are the primary rasa transcendental mellows which manifest during bhava stage.
Okay. What does the term stahi and bhava mention? Stahi means what?
These are the permanent emotions, Prabhu.
Okay, the permanent emotions. Okay. So I'll just take a little recap of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because we have to become familiar with these terminologies. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there are 4 divisions: the Purva Bhag, the Dakshina Bhag, the Paschim Bhag, and the Uttara Bhag, the eastern, southern, western, northern. So in the eastern side, there is the overview of devotion, which is called as Samanya Bhakti. And then there is devotion in practice, Sadhana Bhakti, Vaidhi and Raganuga. And then there is devotional service in ecstasy, Bhava Bhakti, and then in love of God, Prema Bhakti. So now in chapter 23, we are discussing the 3rd wave and the 4th wave in one sense. And then the southern division, that is the southern side, there is the overview of rasa, Vibhava, Anubhava, Satviki Bhav, Vyabhichari Bhav, and Stahi Bhav. So Mahaprabhu mentioned Stahi Bhava Nam. So I would like to introduce the concept and the overview of rasa in brief, not in detail. Because when we study Bhakti Rasamrita in the southern side very soon, that time we will go more into detail. So rasa has many components, and one of the most chief components is Stahi Bhav, the permanent emotion. And there are other samagri. The other samagris are 4: the Vibhava, Anubhava, Sanchari or the Vyabhichari Bhav, and the Satviki Bhavas. When the Stahi Bhav along with these samagris combine, they give rise to rasa. So to give an example, just like halwa. So halwa has the ingredients. The most important ingredients are the rava, then there is milk, there are dry fruits, there is ghee, and then there is sugar. And when all these ingredients are mixed together and cooked, and then you get halwa, and when you taste halwa, you taste rasa. So similarly, when there is a Stahi Bhav, and with this Stahi Bhav, all these other ingredients mix, you relish rasa. This is what is called as rasa. This is spiritual rasa we are speaking. So the most important ingredient which is there is the Stahi Bhav. And only then these other ingredients mix and give rise to rasa. Now, in the example of the halwa, sugar is the most important ingredient. So we can compare sugar to the sahi bhav, because without sugar, there is no meaning to halwa. If you have a wonderful halwa made in ghee with all dry fruits and you taste it and there is no sugar, you don't relish rasa, right? So in that sense, in the halwa example, the sahi bhav is compared to sugar. Now, as one practices Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, then he coverts the position to attain a similar mood of the Ragatmika Bhaktas. And the Ragatmika Bhaktas are the eternal associates in the spiritual world. And he wants to practice or perfect his devotion in the mood similar to in Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya or Madhurya. And in Dasya, he might follow Raktak and Praktak. In Sakya, he might follow Sridhama and Sudhama. In Vatsalya, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj. And in Madhurya, the Gopis. So he practices his Ragana sadhana following in the footsteps of Ragatmikas. And that's why it is called as Raganaga Bhakti. So he wants to attain that same mood, that bhav, which these eternal associates have. Now, as his Raganuga Bhakti attains maturity, especially at the stage of Asakti, he can go through the stages of Nishta, from Nishta go to Ruchi, from Ruchi go to Asakti. But Bhava, just like Bhava is the next stage, he cannot attain Bhava on his own. Bhava is bestowed by the Lord. When the Lord's Ladini Shakti and the Samvit potency descend from the spiritual realm into the heart of that sadhaka, then only Bhava is bestowed to that devotee. And although he's cultivating this mood, this rasa, that mood is revealed, his rasa is revealed with Krishna, because he has cultivated, he has done his meditations according to that. And now his rasa is revealed, his tahi bhav is revealed, based on whatever cultivation he has done in his Raganuga sadhana. If it is in Madhuri Ras, then his spiritual Swarupa is revealed and his rasa with Krishna is revealed. That is his Tahi Bhav. That is Madhuri Ras. So the Madhuri Ras or the Shant Ras or the Dasi Ras or the Vatsalya Ras, that is what is the Stahi Bhav. So this is what Mahaprabhu is actually explaining here in this verse. Krishna Bhakti Rasera is Stahi Bhavanam. The Rasa, devotional Rasa, Bhakti Rasa, and that name is Stahi Bhav. So I hope the definition of Stahi Bhav is clear. Any questions up till now? Any questions, any clarifications? Okay, so I will not go into the definitions of all these other ingredients because that is the subject matter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And when we study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that time we can go more elaborately. But I wanted to make clear this Tahi Bhav terminology definition very clear to you all. Now Mahaprabhu defines Bhava Bhakti. Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma Prema Suryamshu Samya Bhak Ruchibhishchittamarshanya Krit Aso Bhava Uchyate. When devotional service is executed on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma. So at the stage of Bhava, one's Swarupa is revealed. What is his Swarupa in the spiritual world? And one is now transcendental to material nature. He is now situated in Shuddha Sattva. So Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma. And how is it? It is like a sun ray of love for Krishna. Prema Surya Amsha. Surya Amsha. It is a sun ray. Samya Bhav. At such time, devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tastes. Ruchibhish Chitta Marshanya. And one is then situated in Bhava, emotions. Krid aso bhava uchyate. So this is bhava. Now this bhava is the spiritual emotions which spring from the soul. The emotional aspect of the soul, these manifest. Now in the material world, we have relationships, our parents, wife, children, and we have emotions, with the children, the vatsalya ras, with the parents also there is, dasya ras, with the wife it is madhurya ras. But these emotions, what we are experiencing, they are also bhava emotions, but they are from the material platform. They are not from the transcendental platform. We have to have a clear understanding of this. But at the stage of bhava, the soul swarupa is revealed and the soul's spiritual emotions are being experienced. And there are various tastes, rasa is experienced. And as I was mentioning, the rasa is that all other ingredients of vibhav, anubhav, sanchari bhav, all these samagri combine with the stahi bhav and give rise to rasa. That's what is happening. Now, this definition is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and we have discussed in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bhava Bhakti this definition along with Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti and Prabhupada's summary study, which is a 2-3 classes. So I will not go into a detailed explanation of this definition of Bhava Bhakti, which is already we have dealt in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Those who would like to know more, then you can refer to that series. There are at least 3 classes on that, I feel. So I'll just stick on to, because Prabhupada doesn't give any explanation. He just quotes that this is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 131. The 3rd chapter, Bhava Bhakti, 1st verse. Now, Mahaprabhu says, Ei dhul bhavera swarupa tatastha lakshan, premera lakshan ebe shunu sanatana. Bhava, emotion, has 2 different symptoms. Constitutional, swarup lakshan, marginal, tatastha lakshan. Now, my dear Sanatan, listen the symptoms of love. Let us see what Mahaprabhu is going to say, give the symptoms of this bhav. Bhav is also love, please remember that. Now, Prabhupada's commentary is very brief. We will touch upon this. The word Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma means situated on the transcendental platform of pure goodness. In this way, the soul is purified of all material contamination, and this position is called Sarup Lakshan, the constitutional symptom of Bhav emotion. So Mahaprabhu said that there is a Sarup Lakshan and Tatastha Lakshan of Bhava. Bhava Bhakti definition has this Sarup Lakshan and Tatastha Lakshan. Just like the Anya Abhilashita Shunyam verse has the Sarup Lakshan and the Tatastha Lakshan, similarly, Bhava Bhakti definition also has Sarup Lakshan and Tatastha Lakshan. So what is Sarup Lakshan? The Sarup Lakshan is that the soul is in the transcendental Shuddha Sattva form, completely purified. By various tastes, one's heart is softened, and there is an awakening of one's loving propensity to render spontaneous service to the God. So, Ruchivis Chitta Marshanya, which was there in that verse of the definition, these are the, because of this state, the heart is softened and the heart is experiencing all these different emotions. So, these are the Tatastha Lakshan. This is called Tatastha Lakshan, the marginal symptom of Bhav. Okay. So here I put it in the chart now. The primary characteristics, Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma. Marginal characteristics is Ruchibis Chitta Marshanya. Devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tastes. So these are the 2 characteristics which Mahaprabhu is speaking. Okay. Any questions up till now? Okay, so let's continue. Text 7. Now Mahaprabhu directly gives, after Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti definition. साम्यान्यमाश्रित स्वान्तः ममतातिशयाङ्कितः भाव एव भाव सह एव सान्द्रात्मा बुधे प्रेम निगत्यते. When that bhava softens the heart completely, Samyan Marshito Swanta becomes endowed with a great feeling of possessiveness in relation to the Lord. Mamata Atishay Ankita, and becomes very much condensed and intensified. Bhava Eva Sandratma. It is called Prema by the learned scholars. Buddhe Prema Nigatyate. So this is the definition of Prema Bhakti, and Prabhupada just he gives that this is found in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 141. So he doesn't go more into the elaborate explanation of Prema Bhakti. And in fact, even in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in one sense, Prema Bhakti has only 16 verses in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And of course, there is elaborate commentary of Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakatakur on this verse also. But again, we will not take up that here. We just stick to what Prabhupada has mentioned in his Chaitanya Charitamrita purpose. So this is the definition of Prema Bhakti. Now, just to make a point that we mentioned that Sadhya Bhakti is Bhava Bhakti as well as Prema Bhakti. But then, why this two classifications in Sadhya Bhakti, Bhava and Prema? What is the difference? So in Bhava Bhakti also, there are still some traces, especially because of aparadha. And there is still some kind of klesh in the form of some residues there in Bhava Bhakti. But in Prema Bhakti, it's completely eradicated. That's why Samyan Marshito Swanta. Samyan means Samyak Rupina, complete Swanta. And there's what? The Bhava, the emotion is still more condensed. So that's why it is mentioned here. It is condensed and intensified. Sandranda Atma. And at Asakti level, which is part of Raganuga Sadhana, we are attached to Krishna. At Bhava, our attachment is deep. But at Prema, it is more intensified. Mamata Ativa. So there are these additional attributes which are there in the definition of Prema Bhakti. Okay, so text 8. Now this is a scriptural proof Mahaprabhu is giving of Prema Bhakti from the scripture. He's quoting from the Narad Pancharatra. Ananya mamata Vishnu mamata prema sangata bhaktir iti uchate bhishma praladuddhavanarade. When one develops an unflinching sense of ownership or possessiveness in relation to Lord Vishnu, Ananya mamata Vishnu, or in other So we were saying that this Ananya, this is at Raganuga sadhana, one is attached to Krishna at the stage of asakti. In Bhava Bhakti, our rasa is revealed to Krishna, so the relationship is deeply established. But in Bhava Bhakti, the possessiveness to Krishna is very deep. Or in other words, when one thinks Vishnu and no one else to be the only object of love, such an awakening is called bhakti. And here, bhakti here means prema bhakti. We should remember that. By exalted persons like Bhishma, Prahlad, Uddhav, and Narad. So here that bhakti iti uchyatena, here bhakti refers to prema bhakti. So that is very clearly to be understood. Okay, so there is the definition of prema bhakti in text 7 and a scriptural proof given from the Narada Pancharatra. Now, text 9 to 16 speak about the stages of bhakti, gradual development of prema, how it happens. Kono bhagya kona jivera shraddha yadi hoy, tabe se jiva sadhu sangha ekaray. If by good fortune a living entity develops faith in Krishna, he begins to associate with devotees. So this is the stage, the first stage, Shraddha. Sadhu Sangha hoite hoy Shravana Kirtan, Sadhana Bhakte hoya Sarvanartha Nivartana. When one is encouraged in devotional service by the association of devotees, Sadhu Sangha, sadhus will tell you to do bhajan, Shravan Kirtan. One becomes free from all unwanted contamination by following the regulative principles and chanting and hearing. Sadhana Bhakti hoy Shravana Sarvanartha Nivartana. Anartha Nivriti hoyle bhakte Nishta hoy te Shravanadya Ruchi Upajoy. When one is freed from all unwanted contamination, he advances with firm faith, Nishta hoy. When firm faith and devotional service awakens, a taste for hearing and chanting also awakens. Ruchi Upajoy. रुचि होते भक्ते होय आसक्ति प्रचुर आसक्ति होते चित्म जन्मे कृष्ण प्रीति अंकुर. After taste awakened, a deep attachment arises, asakti, and from that attachment, the seed of love for Krishna grows in the heart. Chitta janme Krishna priti ankur, the love, seed of love, that is bhava. It is called as bhava ankur also sometimes. Se bhava gad hoile dhare prema nam, se prema prayojan sarvananda dham. When that ecstatic emotional state intensifies, se bhava gad hoila, it is called love of Godhead, dhare prema nam. When such love is life's ultimate goal and the reservoir of all pleasure. Now, Prabhupada gives purport. He summarizes all these verses from 9 till here, and all these verses together he gives purport. Now kindly, carefully hear and study Prabhupada's purport, because I'm going to ask you questions. And let us see how carefully you can understand what Prabhupada is saying. Prabhupada says, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarizes this growth of love of Godhead as a gradual process. A person becomes interested in devotional service by some good fortune, kono bhagya. He comes in the association of devotees and he becomes interested in devotional service. Eventually, he becomes interested in pure devotional service without material contamination. Now, mark these two statements of Prabhupada. And what are the stages Prabhupada is speaking in these two statements? Please think about it. What are the stages Prabhupada is speaking? And what are the different types of devotional services speaking in these two statements? Think about it, and who would like to answer? I'm just showing you the screen once again. A person becomes interested in devotional service by some good fortune. And then Prabhupada says, eventually he becomes interested in pure devotional service without material contamination. So what are the stages Prabhupada is speaking here? Okay, 2 hands have been raised. Wait 1 second. Let me first now take Varsha Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Prabhuji, I think pure devotional services means a person, a devotee surrenders himself in the lotus feet of Godhead.
No,
And
you have to understand my question. My question is, you have to clearly understand my question. My question is, in this statement, what type of devotional service is being spoken and what is the stage of the devotion? In the second statement, what type of devotion is being spoken and what is the stage? That's it. You have to answer. Okay.
Prabhuji, I
Yeah. What type of,
Sarvadharman Parityaja.
no, I don't want any verses to be quoted. What type of devotion initially one takes up? And what is the stage?
Sorry, Prabhuji, I'm unable to answer.
Okay. Okay. Tukaram Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Mishra Bhakti, Shuddha Bhakti.
Okay. The second statement is Mishra Bhakti. And the
third one is Shuddha Bhakti.
Bhakti. Okay. Now you tell me what is the stage now? At which stage is in Mishra Bhakti? What is that stage? Among the stages of devotion.
Sorry Prabhu, I am unable to recollect them.
Okay, okay, but your answer is correct. So initially all bhakti begins with practice of Mishra Bhakti only. And then eventually Prabhupada says, he comes to the point of Shuddha Bhakti. But Birendra Yadav had raised his hand. Okay, Birendra Yadav Prabhuji.
So it's Ardha stage first.
For this statement. So the second statement. And this is the stage what?
This is the stage where our Ananya Bhakti starts.
What is that stage?
Sadhu Sang Bhajan Kriya.
Purna Shraddha.
Shraddha. Supports the Prabhu.
You got the point?
Prabhu, just I had one question on this. When we say Pur Shraddha is the beginning of this, and we say Nishtha, at the stage of Nishtha, it is firm faith. That firm faith and here Pur Shraddha, is there any difference?
Yes, there is difference. We'll come to that. We'll come to that. Okay. At least we are able to now distinguish between Ado stage, where the bhakti is Mishra, and when one comes to the platform of pure devotional service, then he enters, he becomes qualified now to practice Ananya Bhakti. And that eligibility is Purna Shraddha. And after Shraddha, the next stage is Sadhu Sangha. So now Prabhupada says, at that point, a person wants to associate with devotees. Then, he also associated with devotees here. But this Sadhu Sangha is to practice Ananya Bhakti. So this is a different level of Sadhu Sangha. Please remember now that. At that point, that means this point, when he has become interested in pure devotional service, Anya Abhilashita Shunyam, no contamination. Then he has come to the point of what? Sadhu Sangha. As a result of this association, that this he becomes more and more interested in discharging devotional service and hearing and chanting. This is Bhajan Kriya. The more one is interested in hearing and chanting, the more he is purified from material contamination. Anarth Nivriti. Liberation from material contamination is called Anarth Nivriti, indicating a diminishing of all unwanted things. This is the test of development in devotional service. If one actually develops devotional attitude, He must be freed from material contamination of illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. These are the preliminary symptoms. When one is freed from all material contamination, his firm faith in devotional service awakens. So Prabhupada is speaking that in the beginning of devotional life, when we become interested in devotional service, we follow the regulative principles, and that are preliminary symptoms, he says. That we follow all these regulative principles, but when one is freed from all material contamination, so there he is speaking from Purna Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, Anartyavrti, Nishta. So Purna Shraddha is the eligibility to take up to Ananya Bhakti, and with that practice of Ananya Bhakti, with that Sadhu Sangha and with that Bhajan, Anarthas are all completely eradicated, all material contamination. Then one is situated in Naishtiki Bhakti. Is situated in Naishtiki Bhakti. When firm faith develops, a taste arises, ruchi, and by that taste, one becomes attached to devotional service. When this attachment intensifies, the seed of love for Krishna fructifies. This is Asakti. After Asakti is Bhava. This position is called Preeti or Rati or Bhava. So these are the different terminologies: Preeti, Rati, Bhava. Rati is also affection, spiritual affection, or Rati is attraction. When Rati intensifies, it is called love of Godhead. It's called love of Godhead. This love of Godhead is actually life's highest perfection and the reservoir of all pleasure. Thus, devotional life is divided into two stages: sadhana bhakti and bhava bhakti. Sadhana bhakti refers to the development of devotional service through regulative principles. The basic principle for execution of devotional service is faith, shraddha, whether mixed or pure. Above that, there is association with devotees, and after that, there is initiation by the bona fide spiritual master. All this, in fact, happens in the stage of Adha only. After initiation, when one follows the regulative principles of devotional service, one becomes free from all unwanted things. You come to the point of Anya Bilashata Shunyam. In this way, one becomes firmly fixed and gradually develops a taste for devotional service. Prabhupada is again paraphrasing everything. The more the taste grows, the more one desires to render service to the Lord. In this way, one becomes attached to the particular mellow in the Lord's service, Shant, thus, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. As a result of such attachment, Bhava develops. Bhava Bhakti is the platform of purified goodness. By such purified goodness, one's heart melts in devotional service. Ruchibi Chitta Marshanya, as it was mentioned. Bhava Bhakti is the first seed of love of Godhead. This emotional stage is there before one attains pure love, prema. So Prabhupada is here is saying love as pure love, prema bhakti as pure love. When that emotional stage intensifies, it is called prema bhakti or transcendental love of Godhead. This gradual process is also described in the following two verses, which are found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1:14, 15. 1:4, Prema Bhakti is the fourth chapter in the Eastern division. 15 and 16 are the last two verses of Prema Bhakti also. So Rupa Goswami also, after defining Prema Bhakti, then he explains these gradual stages, which Mahaprabhu is also doing. Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sango Atha Bhajan Kriya Tato Narta Nivritti Syat Tato Nishta Ruchistata Atasaktis Tato Bhavas Tata Prema Budhen Abhyudyanchati Sadhakanam Ayam Premnah Pradhurbhave Bhavet Kramaha. In the beginning, there must be faith. Ado Shraddha. Then one becomes interested in associating with pure devotees. Tata Sadhu Sangha. Please mark Prabhupada's translation, Sadhu Sangha as pure devotees. Thereafter, one is initiated by the spiritual master and executes the regulative principles under his orders. Thus, one is freed from all unwanted habits and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service. Nishtha. Thereafter, one develops taste and attachment, ruchi, asakti. This is the way of sadhana bhakti, the execution of devotional service according to regulative principles. Sadhakanam ayam. Gradually, emotions intensify, and finally, there is awakening of love, prem, bhava. This is the gradual development of love of Godhead for the devotees interested in Krishna consciousness. So this is how Prabhupada refers these two verses from the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. Now, as a scriptural proof, he gives this verse from the Kapila Shiksha. Satam prasangan mama veera samvida bhavantirit karna rasayana kata tajjoshanadashvapavargavatmani shraddharatir bhaktiranukramishati. The spiritual powerful message of God can be properly discussed only in the society of devotees. Satam prasangan. And it is greatly pleasing to the ear in that association. Bhavanti rit karna rasayana kata. If one hears from devotees, the way of transcendental experience quickly opens and gradually one attains firm faith that in due course develops into attraction and devotion. Shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramashyati. Now, I'm just going to take the explanation of Vishwanath Chakra Thakur on this verse. Because Vishwanath Chakra Thakur is now going to explain that this word Shraddha is actually Asakti, and this Rati is Bhava, and here Bhakti is Prema Bhakti. Prabhupada just says this is quotation from 325-25. Now let us go to Vishwanath Chakra Thakur's explanation. From the association with best devotees, Satam Prasamas, topics of my glorious pastimes become directly realized. Mama Veera Samvido, bringing the devotees to Nishtha. So directly the stage of Nishtha is mentioned in this first line of the verse. Then the topics become an elixir for the heart and ears at the stage of Ruchi. Katha Rit Karna Rasayana Bhavanti. So this is the Ruchi stage. By taste, Tad Joshanath, for these topics, Asakti, Bhava, and then Prema for the Lord. Shraddha Rati Bhakti, which is the destroyer of material life. Apavarga Vartmani, quickly develop in sequence. Ashu Anu Kramishati. So these verses speak from Anarth Nivriti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, and Prema. Let's see Vishwanath Chakra Thakur's explanation. Only by association with devotees does the mind develop attraction to the Lord. The stages are described here. The previous verse mentioned that association which we desired. That is 3:25-24. Then faith first arises from excellent association, prasanga. Sangha, not prasanga it is. Of the devotees, stories of pastimes become nectar for the ears. From inferior association, there is only bhajan kriya, but the stories do not become nectar. Thus, from excellent association, the stories cause anartha nivriti. Then those stories cause nishtha. Those stories become direct realization, samvida, samvyak rupena vida. Vida means to know. Of my great qualities, virya. Then those topics produce ruchi. They are pleasing to the ear and heart. From the taste, Joshnath, of those topics, asakti. Now, please mark here in the bracket it is Shraddha. So, Shraddha can have different meanings and definitions. We have to see in the context. So, our Nishtha is also firm faith, but Nishtha is the stage. And then Bhava Rati for the Lord, which destroys material existence, appears. Then Prema, Bhakti, follows in this order. Anu. Then the Bhakti explained by me now will be preached in the world following this sequence. So this verse of Kapil Shiksha, Satam Prasangan, is also referring to these stages here, if you see. Right at the beginning of creation, Kapil Dev has spoken about these different stages. Okay. Now, the next theme is the 9 symptoms of Bhava Bhakti and their characteristics, which we will take up in the next class. Any questions, any clarification anyone has? Okay, so then we will stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki jai. Hare Krishna.